right. So I'm just gonna call, if it's okay. I'm gonna call the April 29th meeting of the Comox Valley Regional District Board to order. And as we always do, begin with an acknowledgement of the territories that we are meeting and gathering today on the traditional unceded lands of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And as always, one of the calls to action, this is number 69, Museums and Archives. We call upon Library and Archives Canada to fully adopt and implement the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the United Nations Journée Ornthlicker principles as related to Aboriginal people's inalienable right to know the truth about what happened and why, with regard to human rights violations committed against them in the residential schools. Also to ensure that its record holdings related to the residential schools are as accessible to the public as possible, and to commit more resources to public education materials and programming on residential schools. And before starting the meeting, I did want to take a minute just to acknowledge what happened in Vancouver over the weekend, the terrible attack on people celebrating their culture in the Filipino community in the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival. And our deepest condolences to the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival, their families, and the entire Filipino community during this incredibly challenging time. Senseless tragedies of this nature are hard-hitting, and we need to continue to stand together, protect each other, and respect each other more than ever at moments like this. And with that, we'll move into the meeting. So I'll call first for adoption of minutes. Any questions on those? Any opposition to adopting minutes? And that carries. And I should just point out, we have two directors online, Director Brown and Director Morin, and the rest of the board here in the room. And we're moving to reports. First is the communication tool refocus, and I'll hand this over to our CA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll introduce Jake Martins, General Manager of Corporate Services, to provide this presentation on the social media refocus communications tools. So Jake, over to you.
Thank you very much, James, and good afternoon, directors. Yes, this report before you provides some brief information on some plan changes that staff are proposing to our communication tools and tactics. The CVRD uses a wide variety of methods to both inform and engage with the community concerning our services and programs. And over the last several years, we've seen some significant changes occur within the social media landscape. We use a variety of social media platforms to communicate, and of course, this is not prevalent on all platforms per se, but certainly some of the major ones have seen a marked increase in the rise of incivility, unkind comments, and just generally unconstructive interactions. So in response, staff are noting here a few changes that we're proposing to outline changes in some of the functionality to some of our social media accounts, as well as changing the platforms themselves. We've also included here a proposal to highlight a free e-newsletter so that we can provide more direct communication out to the public through that method and others. We've noted here also there's a number of local governments that have taken similar action to align their communications with their corporate values. And so we see this falling into the same category in our front as well. The board has not established a policy concerning the particulars of communication tools and tactics. That's generally seen as an operational matter. So this is an informational item report here to the board, but given its community relevance, we certainly wanted to bring it forward to you tonight. With that, Mr. Chair, myself and our Manager of Communications and Engagement, Jennifer Steele, is also joining us remotely. Are pleased to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Jake. Just looking and seeing, we'll go to Director Grant first.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just reading through some of the changes, and I'm not sure what restricting comments and discontinuing paid advertisement for Meta, if you can figure out how to advertise on Meta, then. but I'm just wondering, and why we would be closing down X. It would seem to me that the more communication would be better. So I'm not sure. And if you are going to restrict comments, who's in charge of that?
Yeah, so it's actually through the chair, it's a functionality that we can enable or disable. And so with this change, we would then disable the ability to provide comments on those certain platforms. In respect of X, so that is one of the platforms that we've seen that marked increase in behaviors that are generally directed towards CVRD and community members alike. And with a fairly limited following in that regard, we see more value in using the other platforms such as Blue Sky and the existing ones that we have.
So what kind of comments are we talking? Like, I have no idea. I've been on X once, I think, so I don't really know what it is, but I'm just like, it's starting to smack a little bit of, just stopping people from being able, and censorship really. And so I'm a bit nervous about that, to be honest with you.
Sure. So through the chair, we generally use social media as a tool to disseminate information, not to engage. We have an engage online platform that we use to actually, engage with the community around. These platforms are not intended for that purpose. And so what's occurring is that we are putting out information, and then there is depending on the nature of course, a variety of commentary that's oftentimes, again, directed to us or between community members that is rude, abusive, harassing in some cases. And so we're trying to take actions here to reduce that, the prevalence of that.
All right, thanks, Jake. And I see a couple of comments in the room, and I also see Director Brown. We'll go first to Director Grief, then Director Brown.
Thanks very much. Well, as you probably imagine, I'm an expert at social media. I just stay off it entirely. If it wasn't for the election, I would probably not be on anything. And I have to thank Director Arbor actually and my own kids for coaching me through it the last election. But yeah, I have a problem with freedom of speech issues too. I mean, I don't think anybody around this table suffered more SH and abuse than I have over the last 17 years. Pretty serious stuff, as you well know, ended up in court and everything else. So, I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but it's part and parcel of the game. And I think that for me, looking at it first blush, X used to be Twitter, and the former mayor of Comox would be lost without his Twitter, I think. He was on that thing all the time. It is what it is, what it is. We're sure the hell not going to stop it. People, the discourse in the public square has definitely hit the toilet. We know that. I mean, it's been doing that for a long time. I think the fact that we're signaling out X, it smacks of anti-Elon hysteria, and I don't approve of it. I don't approve of some of the comments that are on I mean, in public media, even as well as the state-sponsored media. So when we start to play kingmaker here, or God, on conversations and communications, I think it bodes very, very ill for everybody. I mean, we have to suck it up. We can't control the universe. It's I think the way to make it better is through education. I was amazed today talking to somebody. It was a surprise to them that Canada didn't have a vice prime minister like the States has. These are people who grew up here. I mean, they haven't got a clue what the difference in level of government, what powers and controls we have at local government, opposed to provincial government, opposed to federal government. They don't have a clue how it works. People are necessarily conspiracious. It's conspiracious these days. I know the people that the recent election was fixed. This was all stop the steal. It just happened yesterday. I mean, my God, man, we're going down a crazy road, but we're not going to fix it. And I think this looks like feeble kind of amateurish attempt to delve in stuff that's really not our bailiwick. Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just one note I want to highlight is that certainly there are numerous social media platforms, and we're not proposing we exit the space completely. This is just making an adjustment within that. We already use, as we've noted in the report, a variety of other platforms. So This is reflecting some of the changes we've observed, the reduced content moderation, the prevalence of misinformation and disinformation on some of these platforms, and it's proposing an adjustment to it, not a wholesale exit from that space.
Thanks, Jake. And Director Grieve, I might ask that words like feeble and hysterical and childish, when applied to our staff's reports, are probably not particularly respectful. Perhaps you could make your comments a bit more concise and a bit more constructive, if that's all right. I thought you'd enjoy the irony of that. I often be critical of things. I'm just asking you to perhaps to be a bit more courteous.
I think if I could just add one more thing to Jake's comments there, part of this decision is really around the available resources we have to be able to support the conversations, the engagement that we're having in community. And so these actions are not taken lightly. It's really to be able to make the best use of the resources we have in the most appropriate way. So like Jake said, we are continuing to maintain presence on social media, but being mindful about the resources we have to provide those supports.
Thank you. And before we go to other speakers, I was just going to ask Jake if you wanted to respond to the idea that this is censorship. My understanding is we're simply eliminating comments on Facebook. So we're not picking and choosing. We're just saying that will be none. And
Correct.
The only choice that we're making particularly would be to not be participating in X in the future. And can you just restate the reason? Because I don't believe it was about Elon Musk. Would you be able to just clarify the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, primarily this is about the changes we've seen to some of those platforms. And so I think it's been widely kind of talked about in the media, the reduced content moderation that has occurred. And there's, I appreciate there's a variety of perspectives on the nature of the dialogue that occurs on some of these platforms, but certainly from our perspective, there is more of this uncivil, disrespectful behavior that is more prevalent on some than others. And so we're looking to, as James noted, focus our resources on those that we feel like more aligned with our corporate values, where we don't have to spend the time addressing these in accordance with our social media code of conduct policy. And this aligns with that.
All right, thank you. I'll go next speaker, Director Brown online.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to offer support for this policy. We adopted a similar one last night in Cumberland. We are just entering the land of social media with a little trepidation for the reasons outlined by Jake. We're launching, but we are not allowing comments at all. And largely because we just don't have the staff capacity to manage them. And just for information's sake, for people who don't spend a lot of time moderating social media pages, for instance, on our bulletin board, we have 4 different moderators who'd spend an enormous amount of time just removing bots from the conversation thread. So it's not even like it's not censorship in any way. It's just managing the platforms that allow these. They're not even people responding and making silly comments. And for me, freedom of speech is about allowing voices to be heard. And we have so many mechanisms to allow people to reach out to us, to email us, to engage on the engage.ca website on a variety of things. People are free to take our content and post it on their page and generate conversations that way. But we need to not only protect our staff from terrible comments that they have to read and respond to or delete or manage in some way, but we also need to respect governance in a way. And I think when we get into back and forths on social media pages, it can quickly deteriorate into not productive conversation. And what we really want to do is share information and educate people about what we're doing and ask them to share their comments with us in a safe way via email or the other traditional tools of communication that we have more control over. That's my thoughts on it. So thank you for bringing this forward.
All right, thanks, Director Brown. And next we'll go to Director Carr.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm a big fan of that Engage Comox Valley engagement tool. I think it's a beautiful platform and really allows residents to engage on whatever topics they're interested in locally. I'm wondering if it was discussed or thought of, rather than simply closing down X or using Meta less, if maybe using those platforms as feeders to the Engage Comox Valley platform. So yeah, take away the comments ability, reduce the negativity and the engagement back and forth and time and harassment of staff, et cetera, but just use them as feeders to Engage Comox Valley, because there are some people in our community that might only use Meta or might only use X, and that's how they get their news, and we wouldn't want to exclude them as well. So thoughts on that? Question for staff.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, absolutely. We want to use all these platforms to help drive people to the platforms that we're using, and also the sources of information that are inclusive and available to everyone, including our website. So if someone's operating only on Facebook to get their information, we want to share information through that method. But then if the more detailed information concerning that is on our website, we're going to create those linkages and likewise to Engage Comox Valley. So yeah, wherever we can, we try to cross-pollinate and make sure that we're distributing information through a variety of means. And oftentimes we're driving back to either Engage Comox Valley or to our website, as those are kind of our core sources for engagement and information dissemination.
Great, thanks, Jake. And we'll go to Director Morin. And Vicky, was your hand up again, or is that okay? Great. Director Morin, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm really happy to see this come forward. I know with City of Courtenay staff, they actually screen out a lot of, I'm sure RD staff does as well, screens out really awful stuff. So I think even what we see on social media is already been filtered, and it's kind of bad enough. And I think we, we do have a duty to, we have respect for workplace policies and all these things that we need to make sure that our staff are not being, targeted. And I just think that, yeah, there's not really any productive use of some of the social media in terms of we're not able to kind of follow up on things properly. It, like Jake said, it takes up a ton of staff time if we were to try to moderate it. And I just don't think it's productive. I think there's other ways of communication and engagement that like have been suggested that are way more effective. Social media is often just a cesspool, really. And I guess that's about it. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that frank assessment. Next we'll go to Director McCollum.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to staff. I'm supportive of the recommendations that are outlined, or the suggested changes that are being shared with the board today. I would say that our comm staff are experts in how we do this work and how we share information and engage with the community. And if they're telling us that they're seeing less value in spending resources like HR resources on certain platforms, that we should take their advice. It's not my professional background, and that's what we hire communication staff for. I also think that if we don't manage the risk of requiring additional staff, it makes, if we don't manage how we're engaging with social media, it creates inefficiency and requires us to hire staff in order to monitor and respond to social media comments. And I just don't really see this as a good use of our financial and human resources, is hiring people to spend time on social media on our behalf. I think the value of these platforms is that where it's a resource to share information that we have available and allow the public to go and find that information on our social media channels. I don't really think we have responsibility there to provide a venue for people to comment and put in their 2 cents. There's many ways for people to do that on social media, and I don't necessarily think that the CVRD's social media platforms need to be that venue. And then the final comment that I had is that I just wanted to underscore that I think there is a lot of value in pushing those e-newsletter subscriptions. I think a lot of people are kind of returning to those sources of regular updates. And I mean, it's easy to delete an email if you're not interested in reading a month's newsletter. And, you know, there's definitely a segment of our community that really likes to know what's going on and have that engagement, and having that land in an email box. It makes good sense to me, and I assume that it would kind of share similar information to what we're already pushing out on social media channels. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
All right, thanks. And we'll go to Director Grant. Oops.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering on the paid posts, can you just tell me how that fits into this whole thing? Are we paying for posts and you want to stop that, or is it other people? I'm not sure what you're getting at there.
Correct. Yeah. So we do promote paid promotions on Facebook to boost our content that we post then on Facebook and other Meta products. And so we've been doing that for a number of years. And there's been a evolution of that as well in terms of our ability to actually reach people that we're trying to with those messages. But we're also seeing, of course, we're wanting to support local advertising opportunities as well in local media that is perhaps more trusted and that also has a reach within our community. And so while the expenditure that we make with Facebook and other Meta products is modest, we don't feel like we're getting good value for that given the changes to algorithms and otherwise. So we see this as part of this overall package in which we can try this and see how it works. And of course, it can always evolve over time, as all of our communication methods do.
Thanks, Jake. And go to Director Helene.
Thanks, Chair. Most of what needs to be said has been said, but what I want to add is that a comment related to free speech. In my public career since becoming an elected official, I've experienced harassing phone calls, anonymous, threatening me. And I've also experienced messages in my mailbox and on my front lawn with things like watch your back and that type of thing. Most of you who know me see me as relatively harmless. But nonetheless, I've had that experience. I don't consider any of those examples to be free speech. If you're not prepared to face up to the person that you're wanting to make the comments to, that is not free speech. And I have no wish that regional district staff should have to encounter the abusive content that comes up on some of these platforms on a regular basis from people who will not actually come forward and sit down and talk to you and say the same thing. So free speech has limits, and we want our staff to be spending their time productively. And I think that this is a good motion, a good initiative. I'm happy to support it. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Helene. And I might just add a comment or two. I think this is particularly timely as we see our local newspaper having fewer and fewer resources to cover local government. We see fewer and fewer reports there, and knowing that Meta is unable to or chooses not to allow actual news to be spread, meaning that what's being spread is not news or is not the product of journalists. I think the e-newsletter, I think particularly to give people a single reliable place that they can check. They don't have to be scrolling through endless posts to find all the bits that comes to them, and it explains the work that we've been doing. I think that's a valuable service, and even more valuable in the times where there are no other easily attainable or reliable sources for news. So anyway, not seeing any further hands at this point, I'll call it. Actually, sorry, we're still on receipt. And this is just for receipt. So anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries. All right, we'll move on next to the Evolve Bike Share 2025 expansion. I'll pass this over to our CAO. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Zabarski, Manager of Transit and Facilities, will be introducing this report. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to try out the e-scooter in the parking lot. I did see a couple of our staff out there with helmets on, thankfully. But Mike, you've got a report here to share, and I think you've also got somebody online to introduce for the presentation. So over to you.
Thanks, James. Through the chair, we did have a few participants on our demo ride and nobody crashed, so that was great to see. And we'll have the scooter around on any number of days over the next week or two. If anybody wants to schedule another ride, I can help them out for sure. We do have David Holzer from BCA on Zoom, but I'm just going to give a quick verbal on the staff report and then hand it over to David. So as you may recall, we had some direction from the board a couple of years ago to enter into an agreement with BCAA and work with their member municipalities to launch the pilot program. We have a license and service agreement with BCAA, and we have an MOU with our Courtney and Comox at this point. BCAA are proposing an expansion of the program in 2025, which is its second year, which includes additional bikes, more parking stations, expanding into Cumberland and down to Royston, as well as adding the electric scooters, which is outside if anybody wants that demo. So the electric scooters are not currently permitted on public roads within BC per the Motor Vehicle Act, although you do see them and they are becoming more common. The province is encouraging communities to join a e-scooter pilot program, which will help determine if and how these devices would be authorized for use on public roads. The program is only available to municipalities at this time, and the municipality needs to pass a bylaw or just a resolution to consent to participating in the pilot program. Preliminary results from the provincial pilot program are suggesting that there's good support from the residents. There's a number of environmental benefits, and so far an excellent safety record. So as we have an agreement with BCA right now just for the e-bikes, we would need an amendment to that agreement to allow scooters if desired. We're proposing that we'll seek support from the board at this time, but not amend that agreement until we get support from any of the member municipalities that are interested in participating. So staff from CVRD and BCA will be attending the council meetings in Cumberland, Courtney, and Comox over the next couple of weeks to see if there's interest at the municipal level. And with that, I will pass over to David, and then we'll both be around for questions after.
Hello. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is David Holzer, Business Development Manager for BCAA's Evolve program. Thanks for having me again. I wish I could have been there in person, but I've come down with a nasty head cold, and I'm going to try and get through this without too many incidents. I did prepare a presentation. I don't know if we can pull that up.
You're co-host, so I think you can pull it up yourself if you have it handy, but otherwise I'm sure we can look for it.
Hold on. I can share. Great. Wonderful. Sorry, I'm new to Zoom. Please forgive me.
No rush. You're working with a cold. It's okay.
Okay, I'll take it you guys can see this. All right, moving on. So today
we've got it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Like I said, thank you, Mike, for the introduction. I just wanted to talk to you about our big expansion. So last year when we launched the program, I came and I told you we kind of launch a little bit small, get the community acquainted to the program, and then we do expansions. And this year, true to our form, we're ready to do the expansion, and I want to run that through. And then I do want to talk about e-scooters and give you a rundown of why you should choose to do it. And if you did choose to do it, how we would manage it and sort of run through our approach for e-scooters. So moving to the next slide. this is our expansion. It's quite significant. What you see in blue is what we started with, and what you see in yellow is what we're planning to expand to. The red ones that you see are private sites that we've already are planning to expand to. So it's 26 new parking zones, 11 in Courtney, 3 in Comox, 4 in the CVRD, one that's already available at the IHOS Gallery. And soon we'll be in Cumberland in a couple of weeks to talk about expanding with 6 stations in Cumberland and 1 all the way in Royston.
David, is
Yeah.
there any way that you might be able to expand that to full screen? That the map is fairly small, and I think we're all kind of
Oh.
interested in seeing where the new. We'll give you a
Yeah,
minute or so.
how's that? Let's do it that way.
Yeah,
Is that better?
that's looking better. Thanks.
All right, I'll give you a second to digest on the map. The big expansion in Courtney is to the south and I guess to the east north. And we looked at like multifamily residential areas and tried to connect those more. And we also looked at the most popular bus routes and started to think about how we can connect through to those. We did run into some issues with our expansion in Courtney due to low cell phone coverage. There would have been a few more stations had there been better cell phone coverage in certain areas. But we'll continue to kind of work away at that. We've made some improvements to our technology, and maybe hopefully someday there'll be better coverage in the area. So if it's okay with you, I'll move forward. You'll see these expansions come in the next couple months is the last thing I want to say. So moving to e-scooters, I guess the one main thing that I want to talk about is why would a community do such a thing? What is the advantages? What do you get out of this? And for us, we believe looking at sort of the data facilitates a higher, better mode shift results. And if we're trying to move people away from driving cars, e-scooter has been a very, very strong way of doing so. So I picked some stats from a few staff reports from communities in British Columbia. So in Coquitlam, they've had a program with both e-scooters and bikes for the last 2 years that has generated 100,000 trips. Their programs just in their town center area, and 94% of those trips are on e-scooters. So it shows like a real popularity for that device over the bike. We see that 1/3 of the trips in Coquitlam they report are replacing car trips. And in Kelowna, which has had a program for quite some time now, they're reporting 48% of e-scooter trips are replacing car trips. So you can see that the devices have this impact of moving people away from using their own car. And that is those kind of stats, just to give you a sense, North America wide, are pretty comparable. The other thing that we know in our system itself is that by providing more ways to get around the community, it makes the community more mobile, and in which they end up making more purchases at local businesses. So our stats show about 50% of our trips result in a purchase at a local business. So when we look to launch an e-scooter program in a community, we look at, we have like 3 main goals. One is for it to be a safe system. One is for it to be accepted by the community, and one is to drive that mode shift I was talking about earlier. And how we do this is that we promote a lot how to safely use the system and ensure the devices are parked properly and maintain pedestrian right-of-ways. This is a major objective of our program. We use a speed limited device, so our e-scooter can only go so fast, which ensures it's safely ridden. And then we collect data and community feedback. This is something that we reported back to you, this board, in December, where we came and told you about all the community, how the community was reacting to the bike share. We'll continue to do that. And when we expand our program, we will do it in a really contained way. We'll start with a limited number of scooters, maybe 50 or 60. This way, there's not too many on the roads at any one time, and we'll let that grow naturally with the usage. We'll use the same parking zones that we have today. All of the parking zones that we've picked have the ability to handle both devices. Our hope is to launch here in the summer. Once we're launched, they're instantly available on our app. So if you've already used the system, you'll now have both options. It's really easy to get people on. And then the other thing that we'll do, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that we'll increase our community engagement. So we'll be more in the community to do demos and such, to help the community learn about how to use these. So the device we picked is really important because we wanted a device that would be safely used in the community. And I wanted to show you this, and I know some of you took it for a ride, but one of the main features of this is the 12-inch front tire and the shock absorbers on the front tire. This allows the scooter to go over uneven cement or rough cement or even dirty pavement types and still maintain a safe riding experience for someone. The other is the short platform. This discourages people from putting two people on a scooter, which we know is inherently dangerous. Finally, and it's not pictured here, but where the blue arrow, there's a helmet attached to all of them. We have ID numbers, so if someone sees the device being ridden or parked improperly, they can report it to us. And we're also working on a bit of a braille decal that we can place for those with visual impairments if they come across it. The other features, it's limited to 25 kilometers an hour, which provides a pretty pleasurable riding experience for the people riding it, but it's not too fast for anyone that's around it. We have all this trip data and usage data, so we know how they're being used around the community. And we also have a 24/7 call center manned here in British Columbia that can respond. Somebody can talk to one of us if they need to report anything. The final thing that's not listed here is that the scooter has turn signals. And for safe riding, this allows people to indicate which way they want to go without having to take their hands off the handlebar. This is really safe for everyone involved, people behind you, the people on the scooter. So when e-scooters come in, we expect a bump in usage, and thus we then bring on more manpower, and we increase our patrols around the community, and we index that to our peak periods to ensure that we're out in the community during when the scooters are being used the most. So we expect that we'll be out in the community on a daily basis because the scooters will be used more, and thus we'll need to swap batteries more often. We'll also need to ensure that the stations are organized before usage to ensure that all the devices are parked correctly. And as the system gets going, we'll start to spot trends, and we'll proactively rebalance devices to ensure that those parking zones are ready and able to handle the demand that we know is coming. The final thing is, and we built a lot of contingencies around this, is that we can respond to emergency situations. And this is something where the device is causing a public emergency very quickly. Within about 20 minutes, we can have someone out of device. So the other thing we'll need to do if we bring in e-scooters is sort of change parking zones. So in high demand and popular parking zones, we'll increase sort of the infrastructure to ensure people park correctly. So this may look like a painted box around the parking area to give people a visual aid, or it may also mean like a bike rack added to that. And we have a couple parking spots that we already know are going to be busy. They're busy now. So we kind of see that as something we'll need to do. And then we'll also update the signage. The other things that we can, but won't right away place are slow and no ride zones. And we'll work with the community if these need to be in place, but this is a way for the community, for staff, or for whoever to ensure that the scooters are not being ridden in areas where people do not want scooters to be ridden, or if they're in areas of high density, a lot of traffic, we can slow them down from 25 to 15 to ensure that they're being ridden safely with all the other pedestrians or other bikes that are riding around. These zones are very easy to upload. They're shown on our app. Once a device goes into the zone, the power is cut, usually within 5 seconds of entering it, and then the device stops. On a bike, it's a little different. You can continue to pedal, obviously. So for customer support, as I said earlier, we have a call center that's manned 24/7, 365. We have a chat bot, we have an email. Anything that gets reported through those is answered within 5 minutes. I mean, calls are answered much quicker. Resources can be allocated within 30 minutes. So this is non-emergency situations. This is just people reporting issues. And then we also do a little bit more work around user behavior management. So we have a strict zero tolerance policy for dangerous riding or sidewalk riding or even tandem riding. These are considered really dangerous acts on these scooters. So if reported and we can find those people, like we can verify that that occurred, we will ban them from the system. We also use warnings and penalties for unauthorized parking and all those other offenses I've mentioned. And finally, because fraud is a part of these systems, we have an active fraud management system that blocks out fraud accounts immediately. So moving to safety education, and I'm moving quick here because I remember we only have 10 minutes. So please feel free to ask questions if I burn over anything.
You
this
can
is
take
something
more
we'll-
than 10. You can take more than 10 minutes if you need it. Like just take the time you need to present the material. It's only
Okay,
for
great.
It's
I
only
will,
for
I will slow down
delegations
a
we have
little.
to block.
Thank you. So safety education. This is probably one of the biggest areas that we're putting a lot of focus on. So we're going to do this in three main ways: the on the device, physical parking infrastructure, on the app, online. So these are the big things. So you'll see on the device, we're going to have a lot of decals and things that are promoting the use of the helmet, how to ride safely, how to park properly at our parking zones. At our app, you'll see a safety message before you're even allowed to start the trip that will educate you on like some of the major rules that we need you to follow. When we're at community events, we also have a safe riding guide. This one says an e-bike safe riding guide. E-bikes and e-scooter safe riding guides are very similar. But we'll be able to hand out to people. We'll also have our e-scooters for people to try out at these events, and we can guide them on how to safely ride it. So we take it very seriously as the like kind of main component is to make sure that people ride these safely, park these properly, and the community accepts the program. And all of this culture of safety is what we're trying to build around this program. So you'll see us updating our parking zone signage. You'll see e-scooter materials online on our website, along with like videos about how to ride safely. And then you'll see us on social media promoting different types of like safety content and tips on how to ride safety. So this is something that we will do, provided the e-scooters come in, like we do already, but we'll amp up once e-scooters come to town. And then my final slide is launch communications and sort of our three main goals with launching these and communicating to the community about what we're doing is build trust and awareness that our program is there, engage in the community, drive ridership and adoption, of course. So really trust and awareness is focusing on educating, public relations, talking to the various media that might be interested in this, and then on social media, building out some content. Engaging the community, this is also through social media, but also being in person at events, at community events. And this gives us a chance to talk not only with the people that potentially want to ride our devices, but maybe members of the community that aren't interested in riding, but want to know more about how this impacts their community. And then finally, driving ridership, we will come out with lots of free minutes and ways for people to give it a try the first time without having to pay the full freight, so to speak. And there'll be lots of paid advertising around town that promotes the program. So I did run through things pretty quick, so I'm happy to take any questions. That's the end of my presentation. I'll stop sharing. Yeah. Actually, if you guys need, I can keep the presentation open and go back to any slides.
That might be helpful occasionally. There are questions about specifics on the slides, but yeah, thanks so much for that. And we're just going to go to some questions in the room. Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I'm just a little confused about a line in the staff report that indicates that the provincial pilot does not permit e-scooters on electoral area roads under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Transportation and Transit. Am I reading that correctly? And if that's the case, how would somebody travel, for example, from Courtenay to Comox on Dyke Road or out to Cumberland, passing through an electoral area on a Ministry of Transportation road?
Yeah, thanks. I'll take that one. So Good question. I'm not sure why the province isn't also participating in their own pilot program. What I understand is that there may be certain low-speed roads with cycling infrastructure in some communities or some electoral areas where they would permit a scooter to pass through, but they wouldn't allow us as a regional district to participate in the pilot program. Unfortunately, so there's very limited electoral area roads where these things might be permitted. And it's like the conditions have to be low speed and cycling infrastructure already in place. And we just don't have that really in our region anyway.
Oh, yeah, on a shoulder where there's a line, I mean, where people normally ride their bikes, that wouldn't be allowed?
Not in our understanding, it has to be like a dedicated bike lane, physical protection rather than a kind of a fog line at the side of the road.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thanks. And alternate director Monroe, go ahead, please.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. And I think a lot of the information may have been given, but I'd like to summarize up in one space here, which is my experience with e-scooter programs in international cities is that there's a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, scooter pollution, where there's a lot of devices just left on sidewalks, blocking doorways, those sorts of things. So I wouldn't mind if you would summarize up for us exactly how this program avoids that concept.
Yeah, I think David can speak to it more eloquently than I can, but I know that the plan is to keep these scooters at the parking station. So you have to start or stop a trip only within one of those parking zones. They couldn't just be left kind of willy-nilly all over the place. And then I'll see if David can provide a bit more of an explanation.
Yeah, happy to. So yeah, the station-based concept is one that more and more cities are gravitating to in regards to like how they manage the e-scooter program. So in many of the cities that you might have, they have what they call free floating, where they're allowed to park pretty much anywhere. We don't operate that system today with our bikes in the CVRD, and with our bikes, we've seen super low abandonment rates. And that's because like when you leave a device outside of a parking zone, you have to pay for the entire time until it comes back to that parking zone. So that kind of deterrent, financial deterrent, is very effective in ensuring that they get into these zones. And that's why we feel like we can effectively manage that in the community by having these parking zones kind of be the only places you can start and end the trip.
Did you want a subsequent? I was going to say one other feature that I hadn't known until I saw it outside is that it has a double kickstand. So it's self-supporting and quite hard to knock over. I've been to other communities where they're just lying on the street and people could trip over them. You can't push a stroller past. So that's one of the concerns I had coming into today, and I was pleased to see when I saw it that was the case. But did you have a follow-up you wanted to ask?
Yeah, second subject, which is further penetration of the bicycle program down into Area A or south of Royston, where there's a pretty good bicycle culture and really an opportunity for traffic right down to the ferry in Buckley Bay, where I suspect there would be a great number of users that would like to avoid bringing their car across the ferry. So I'm wondering what might be happening in the future to allow for greater use of scooters down in Fanny Bay, Union Bay, Garrick, various communities south of Royston.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly before you, David. I was just going to say that we've been, keen to see these expansions into a larger geographic area, and last year starting within just Courtenay and Comox, and this year expanding to Royston and Cumberland, and I think the same could apply in the future. We'd be looking to see where we could go next. So yeah, keen to hear how David thinks about that too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We are in a very prolonged and slow going talks with BC Ferries, because we operate in many communities that have ferry terminals, to set up stations at terminals. We see this as an excellent kind of opportunity for our service. So I think it's something we'll keep on our radar as we continue to have those chats with BC Ferries about how we can set up stations with them.
All right, thanks very much. We'll go next to Director McCollum.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, David, for the report. Really happy to see the map at the beginning of your presentation, just highlighting all the different expansion spots that are going to roll out in the next few months. I definitely think that the convenience of this service is the critical ingredient in ensuring that we get mode shift in delivering the service here. Yeah, and also that's great to hear that the BC Ferries locations is something that's being worked on, and it's unfortunate that it's not a straightforward engagement in getting a parking spot at the BC Ferries locations, because I did notice that the Powell River ferry terminal wasn't on the list, and I appreciate that that's being worked on and noted. Also, in listening to the presentation, I think a lot of the issues that I've witnessed in other cities around e-scooters are being mitigated by a number of measures that I think really result in the fact that this, we're not on the leading edge of this, and that it has been tried in other places, and with definitely some bumps along the way. I think my main concern around the scooters is, or the e-scooters, is just the additional burden for municipality, like for our municipality in managing, difficult, like I think you highlighted behaviors in one of the slides, and just realistically, it is going to land on likely the bylaw more than the service provider. I think you use a contractor here. And one of the studies that I read around e-scooters and leading up to today's discussion, they surveyed people renting e-scooters. I don't know how widely the geographic area was, but 90% of them said that they were riding them on sidewalks. So, and of course, we've all seen them used on sidewalks. So I think the education piece is going to be really critical if this is, if there's an interest in doing this when it comes to our council. I know we're not being asked to weigh in on that specifically at this board. I also saw in an article around Kelowna, because that seems to be probably the closest comparable, that there was 72 injuries in the first year of the program. And my guess is there's probably a lot of those are related to people using them intoxicated after being out at night. I know that our e-bikes also get used when there's no bus service. And so it just is kind of an issue that's likely to arise. And I'm wondering if there is any measures through the app or, in the system that can address that particular issue, whether there's technology or at least some type of communication with the rider that they're required to be sober in using these devices, whether it be the e-bikes or the e-scooters.
Yeah, happy to take that. Thank you for the questions. So let's start with the last question first around the sobriety. Yeah, there are certain things that we can do. We can definitely add more to our opening screen around sobriety, and we can time it up maybe so that it appears a little more bold around that, especially for nighttime trips. We've seen in the marketplace, people use like sobriety tests, but they're easily gamified and blasted around. So they're not really something that are effective. Like there really hasn't been a truly super effective way to like ban someone who is not sober from riding these devices. We don't see the same level of like non-sobriety sober usage of this service that I think we saw in those early days, and especially like you'll see Kelowna, the early years of Kelowna definitely are much different now, 5 years in. And as you pointed out, you guys are not on the front end. This is now these programs are quite established and people are quite aware of how to use them. So from that point, we will watch this. If this becomes issues, we can do other more preventative things. We can reduce the number of vehicles on the roads at night. We can, move those vehicles from those areas that we think it's occurring in. We can do a lot of proactive steps to ensure that it doesn't happen. It's kind of one of those, we want to assume the best, that people are using them the right way. And then if we have to react, we'll react. When it comes to behavior around sidewalk riding, I'm not sure where you got that study. I know sidewalk riding has been a problem in certain areas. There are towns in Alberta where they actually want people to ride them on sidewalks because their infrastructure is not very strong. But I will say this about sidewalk riding. It's generally done when people feel really unsafe riding a scooter on the road. And in Courtney and Comox, what I notice is the roads are quite safe to ride on. Even if the infrastructure isn't fully there, there's quite wide. And most people would prefer to ride on the road than on a sidewalk because it's faster. It has less obstacles. So I think if we see sidewalk riding in the community, it's a great indicator to you as a board and to the councils that we operate in, is that there's an issue on that street. And we can also at that point institute some slow and no ride zones if necessary to stop people from riding on those streets if that's truly what we need to do. So there are what I would like you to leave with is that we can react to any of these scenarios that pop up, and we can be really proactive and really quick to react. But it also is a great way to learn about your community and learn about sort of areas of weakness sometimes as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Those are all really helpful tidbits of information. And yeah, I think that the safety and sidewalks are probably the biggest concern for me. And I think you have provided a lot of useful information around that piece. I guess my other question is, is the interest in providing the e-scooters that there's people that are only likely to use the service if they can use a scooter? Or like, do you think it really creates a broader appeal, or would it just be people kind of preferring to jump on a scooter over a bike, but they would grab one or the other? And I know this is kind of a newer program, but I'm just wondering if we're really expanding the users or if it's just providing an alternative to what's there.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a really good one. So what we think is a perfect system, e-bikes versus with e-scooters, will supply an option for people wanting to do different types of trips. So most people will use an e-bike for a longer trip, and we see that in our own data, 4 or 5 kilometer trips on the e-bike, because it's easier to ride a bike that kind of distance than ride an e-scooter. Where the e-scooters really thrive is the shorter trips, anything under 3 kilometers. Lots of people really take e-scooters for that trip. So by providing both, you're giving people options to do either. The thing that really is obvious is that the e-scooter is a far more popular device, and that more and more people are interested in trying an e-scooter for whatever reason than a bike. And so, what we see is that e-scooter gets 6 times more use than an e-bike. So we definitely believe that it's not just providing options to the existing users, that it's going to bring more people into the fold and add more popularity to the program.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm just going to make a final plug, is that our council and this board is pretty interested in reducing car dependency in whatever way possible. And I hope that one day we're going to have a conversation about car share in our community as well. You don't have to comment on that because I know it's not your portfolio, but I just wanted to, it's something that we've been wanting to see provided here for a while, but we're, I think, a little bit too small at this point, but I just want to put that on the radar too. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Director McCollum, and go to Director Kerr.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Mike, for the chance to try out one of the scooters earlier. That was a lot of fun, and thanks, Councillor Grant, for going first and showing me the way. Appreciate it. Lots of fun. And to alternate director Monroe's great question about the bike pollution. It's been great having the actual stations that they are parked in, and I yet haven't seen any bikes abandoned on the side in Comox or Courtney since the program started, which is great. And David, it was nice to see you at AVICC a couple of weeks ago. I guess my question is more about the parking zones for the scooters and bikes, and I really would like to see even more in the residential areas. Mike and I had a chance to chat about this briefly as well today. So just wondering what the plan is, high density residential neighborhoods, those with apartment buildings or heavily streeted communities that could have a park perhaps with a number of devices that people could take to and from work each day. Thanks.
Yeah, we're definitely open to this. We really want to bring in more parking zones, especially into the residential areas. Where, like I said, in Courtney, we're struggling a little bit with sort of cell phone coverage. There was a couple ideal spots that we were hoping for, but we couldn't have a reliable enough cell phone signal to make it work. But I think we'll continue, like, we don't have to do this on a yearly basis. We can always be kind of iterating the program. And we did that last year. We added stations throughout the year. So we're more than happy to keep kind of working to find suitable locations that can add more stations. And especially if we do add the e-scooter, it'll make it a lot easier for us to add more stations. We'll have a few more devices out there. Because what we balance is the utilization of the system with spreading the system out too far. So, and bringing more devices and making sure those devices get used. So we're always in this balance, but we're always looking to expand. Like, please don't get the wrong impression. Like, we're looking to we feel like the trip to and from someone's home is probably the largest trip a person does, and we would like to get closer to people's homes.
Great, thanks very much. I'll go to Director Grant, and then we'll go to Director Morgan
Yeah,
online.
thank you. So I'm just wondering, we have nautical days coming up, and we have quite a steep hill to get down there, and the road has been under construction for some time. And we always have problems getting people from the park up to the main road. It seems like this might be a really good solution to have some of these down at the park where you could just ride up the street and get to the flat ground. Is there any way that we could come up with a program that we could do that a couple of times a year or whatever? I'm not sure how it works, but it seems like it might be a good solution.
Yeah, I know last nautical days and the air show and a couple of other events, BCAA were able to bring a whole bunch of bikes to that location and kind of redistribute the fleet to serve those kinds of events. So we can continue to work with them and do that as well.
Great, and I'll go to Director Morin then.
Great, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Of course, you know that I'm very enthusiastic about this program. I'm happy about the questions that have been asked about the scooters. I had some initial, not huge concerns, but just queries about the safety piece. But my question is more around the bikes and potentially the scooters in terms of that equity plan that you had spoken about introducing. Because I do think, I mean, certainly we're seeing a lot of uptake on these bikes, and I see them constantly where I live, scooting by. But the financial barrier is there for people who really, would probably use them. So I guess that's one piece. And then the other was, I couldn't remember in your initial presentation when you came to us way back, if there are any, I know there's just the one design of the bike, but I couldn't remember if there was a cargo bike type program anywhere as well, because I also see that would be utilized as well.
Thank you very much for question, and I really appreciate you bringing back up the equity piece. It is an update that I didn't squeeze into the presentation, but I'm happy to give. So our inclusive mobility plan is what we're calling it. We have spent the last probably 6 months to a year working with some researchers at the SFU on analyzing the existing programs that are out there and how effective they've been. And what we've found is that the programs exist, but they're not making a true impact. So we spent a little bit of time kind of thinking about how to make an impact, how to create like a measurable way of gauging these programs for communities. So we are in the final stages of sort of designing one, and we hope to be launching it this year in your community. Originally, we've been thinking about working with community partners that service disadvantaged communities. And what we plan on doing is more of the same. But what we want to also do is be able to report back to you like impact and how it's impacting, as well as like how we are pushing forward with this program. So I know it's not like, yeah, we got this great program and I'll roll it out to you. The answer is not perfect at this point, but I want you to know that we've been working on it and we have a true goal to make it really impactful in the community and be able to report back to you and the community that like this is the impact it's making, rather than just having a program and then having some stats behind it that don't really show true impact. So we're excited to launch it. We're excited to sort of start working in the community to get it off the ground. And we're excited to hopefully by the end of the year, when I come back, we'll be able to start reporting about how it looks and how it's working.
Right. And then yeah.
The e-cargo bike program. Yeah. So we are running an e-cargo bike program with the district and city of North Vancouver. They did it through grant funding they received from BC Hydro and the Landlords Association of BC. It's really the only way that the program is able to work. So in North Van, they run it out of their libraries and it's free to use for residents. And it's really working because of that grant funding. We are just the custodians of the bikes. We ensure that the bikes are charged and ready to go. And we provide a platform that books the bikes for the residents. It's actually in our Evo platform. It's under Evo Return, so you can kind of see it today. Unfortunately, that we don't have a way of collecting revenue ourselves through that program at this time. So it really is something that we have to work in partnership with communities to look for funding sources. But it does exist, and we're happy to like work with the community if that's something, if there's some staff resources to dedicate to sort of looking for grants, and we can co-sponsor stuff and try and find a way. The impact's been amazing in North Van. We launched it for 2 months. We only had 8 bikes and we had 130 trips in 2 months. So and the goal of that program really is to give people a chance to ride them, a try before you buy scenario, so that the community gets to ride one, see how useful it could be, and then hopefully buys one for themselves. So yeah, that's our program. It's something we can bring to your community. It's just going to take a little bit more work.
Thank you.
David, no further hands, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions myself. The safety concerns that I had, and some of my concerns were alleviated by reading the BC government report, which indicated that 0.01% of trips resulted in any kind of incident, which is obviously it's 1 in 10,000. And of the opportunities for things to go wrong, I think riding on the sidewalk is one of them, and I think riding while intoxicated or scootering or riding while intoxicated is a concern. It occurs to me that I don't know if they have accelerometers on them, the scooters that you're using, but I would imagine with AI it wouldn't be that difficult to detect how drunk people ride scooters and how people who aren't drunk ride scooters, and the of being on a sidewalk rather than on a road with the regular spaces between. Anyway, I'm hoping that someone is perhaps putting a bit of work into that to identify those dangerous behaviors remotely and then find a way of perhaps shutting down the scooter. Have you heard of anything like that being explored?
Yeah, actually I have. And there are like slowly but surely there are more technology coming on that is trying to do that work. Unfortunately, it's not at a place where it can be taken to a retail level, like put in place. Cutting a person's power off of their scooter is a really inherently dangerous thing to do, depending on where they are, how they're riding on the road, and putting them maybe in a dangerous spot. So it has to be done with like the utmost care and attention. But there are technologies that are coming out. We're investigating those technologies, being device agnostic as we are. We're allowed to continue to look at like different types of visual readers that are out there that are giving us a better sense of where bikes are, where our bikes or scooters are being ridden. As we get better and better with like cell phone coverage and GPS, we can also detect using those types of sources. So we don't have it today, but it is out there, and it's something we're watching. And we actually have a demo of we're demonstrating right now. We're testing a scooter that has these features. So
okay, well, that's interesting to hear. And then your response kind of raises, there's sort of two questions there. One, can you detect it? And if you do, what do you do? And perhaps shutting off the power immediately is not a terribly wise decision, but there may be like a red light that goes off that says in 60 seconds you'll be drawn to a halt, or perhaps you would have your privileges suspended. But the ability to detect that kind of behavior in terms of correcting it seems, anyway, encouraging to hear that's on the way. All right. Well, thanks for your time, David. Appreciate the presentation. And I think at this point, there are no further questions. So we'll get to receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Is your question, Richard? Okay. All right. Thank you. And it's moved and seconded. Any questions on the recommendation? Anyone opposed to that? And that carries. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time. Have a good evening and feel better.
Thank you. Bye now.
All right, next item, reallocation of funding for the Cumberland Affordable Rental Housing Project. And thank you very much. The seconder. Thank you very much. And I'll pass it over to CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Michelle Hebert, our social planning coordinator, will be introducing this report on the Cumberland Affordable Housing Development and a reallocation of funding as such. And I see Lisa Kilpatrick is online as well. And perhaps I introduced Michelle ahead of Lisa's introduction, but Lisa Kilpatrick is our Manager of Community Development and Resilience and is also here for the presentation.
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon. Through the chair to the directors. This report presents a request to modify the recipient of funds for the Cumberland Affordable Housing Project. These funds were originally approved to go to Comox Valley Transition Society. And note that the funds were actually never issued. But since that time, there's been changes to who's leading the project. And so now the Transition Society is no longer involved. Instead, Macola is working with the Village of Cumberland to complete the project. And we've received a request from the Village of Cumberland that the funds now go to Macola. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I think those are pretty comprehensive presentation. There are no questions here. So we are on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries. Someone second that? Seconded, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed to recommendation number 1? That carries. Recommendation 2. Thanks very much. All right. Anyone opposed to recommendation 2? And that carries as well. Thanks so much. Have a good evening. Next topical tariff response considerations, and I'll pass that over. Thank you very much to our CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Karen Garrett, our Manager of Procurement, will be introducing this report in response to a board direction from February asking about the tariff response considerations. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon through the chair to the directors. I'm here to provide you with an update on the steps we've taken in response to the board's direction regarding U.S. tariffs and procurement impacts. Since the initial direction, staff have taken a proactive but measured approach. We've engaged our vendors likely to be impacted, incorporated new language into construction tendering documents, encouraging Canadian-made products, and attended multiple webinars hosted by procurement and construction associations to stay informed on the evolving situation. We've also been collaborating with other municipalities to share best practices. Importantly, we've analyzed our own procurement data and found that US suppliers accounted for only about 1% of our 2024 operating spend. So that suggests that while tariffs are a concern, their direct impact on our operations is currently limited. So looking ahead, we'll continue monitoring the situation, asking our vendors to flag tariff impacted items. We'll specify Canadian products where practical and use cooperative purchasing agreements like those with the Canoe Procurement Group and the province's corporate supply arrangements. A key takeaway from the various industry discussions is that stability is important. And fortunately, our existing procurement policy already gives us the flexibility that we need to respond thoughtfully. Through smart specifications, bid alternatives, and collaboration with our design teams, we can remain compliant with trade agreements like the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, Canadian European Union trade agreements, and the New West Partnership trade agreement. We've also recently reviewed the UBCM legal guidance on procurement practices in response to US tariffs, and we're confident that our current approach aligns with the recommended focus on maintaining fairness, transparency, and compliance with applicable trade agreements. So in short, our approach has been to stay the course, make targeted adjustments where needed, and maintain a stable and fair procurement environment. But we will continue to monitor and adapt as the situation arises. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the quick turnaround, the subsea and emerging issue, and appreciate how you the staff report set out the amount of time that's been putting into this. So thank you. Are there any questions from directors? All right. Well, thank you for your very clear explanation. That's for receipts. So we'll just anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries. Thanks very much. Have a good evening. And next is our 2025 strategic planning update, and this is for receipt. Thank you very much. And James?
Thanks, Chair. And Christiane Weil, our Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives, is on her way down. Probably just need a minute or two and she'll be in the room, and she's got a short presentation to introduce the strategic planning session coming up in June, as well as the government advocacy strategy. So we'll just wait for
beverage.
Okay. So thanks, Chair. Christiane Weil, Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives, will be introducing the report on the 2025 strategic planning session, as well as the government advocacy strategy, and available for questions. So Christiane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to provide the board with an update on the 2025 strategic planning session, which will focus on the remaining term of office and how to move forward in what's proving to be a very challenging political climate. The day proposes to include updates from staff on key projects, followed by a discussion about whether or not to stay the course, push forward, or pull back, given the current operational context. And that will be preceded by a dedicated session for the electoral areas, which will take place earlier that month. As in previous years, Alison Habkirk will act as facilitator to guide the board through these discussions, offering relevant historical context through her past work with the CBRD and as a former local government official. And we're also proposing to include a discussion on communications, which will build on the information that you received from Jake this evening. And the intent is to identify stories about core services that you want to tell over the next 16 months in order to address those issues that are most important to your constituents. Also for your consideration is the proposed government advocacy strategy, which outlines the key topics and recommended actions to support the board's strategic priorities. Some of the proposed topics support resolutions already put forward by the CBRD to AVICC for sponsorship at the UBCM conference. And later on in the agenda, you'll also consider the topic of funding for small water systems to be submitted to the FCM for consideration. This strategy carefully considers the uncertain fiscal climate caused by continued tariff threats and the federal, sure. Is this better? Right there. How about this? It sounds so loud to me over here. Sorry about that. It's like I have a megaphone in my ear. Okay, where did we leave off? I think I'll speak to the province of BC has offered new ministry mandates and government priorities that are clearly emphasizing fiscal responsibility, the economy, and housing as a provincial focus. And as such, we've limited our request to 6 key areas of importance and align these as best as we can with new provincial mandates. And for those areas that may not be a provincial priority, we'll utilize regional delegations and join with other regional districts that have similar topics of interest so that we can strengthen our voice. So this report lists the 6 key topics and strategies in detail, and I'm pleased to take any questions that you have as you consider the recommendation before you today. And I can touch on anything else that you might not have heard through the mic. Sorry about that.
Hey, any questions? I thought it was a pretty comprehensive report, but all right. Well, sorry, Director Helene. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with you. It's a comprehensive report. I think the key issue, though, is that we may need to be flexible in the times that we're living in. It's quite possible things will change. The tariffs may no longer be an issue at some point, and who knows? Things seem to be changing on a day-to-day basis, but we also have a new Canadian government, and we'll see what priorities come out from that and how that impacts the work that we do. But I really appreciate the work that staff have put into this. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And so seeing no further questions, we're on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries. And the recommendation? Great. Any discussion on that? Anyone opposed to the recommendation? All right. Thanks so much, Christiane. Great. We'll move now on to minutes, and we have the ESC for April 7th for receipt. Any questions on that? Anyone opposed? That carries. The Sewage Commission for April 8th for receipt. Anyone, any questions? Anyone opposed? And that carries also. The Water Committee for April 8th for receipt. All right, any questions? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Then we have one piece of new business, and I'll perhaps introduce that because this is a, thank you very much. So this is, as you recall, I introduced a motion to the board for UBCM about sustainable funding for small water systems. And this is one for FCM. I've been working with a colleague, Geraldine Kirk, who's the EA director in Fraser Fort George, and the EA chair for UBCM, and she'll be introducing the same resolution at their regional district table, just to emphasize that it's a widely experienced concern. And last week at the chairs and CAOs forum, we begun the practice last year of looking for common advocacy priorities, and we came up with 2 priorities, one of which was small water systems. And I believe that every single chair in the room had concerns about this and saw it as a high priority. So anyway, hoping that this will receive support from the board. And James, you were talking with the CAOs at that time. Is there anything you wanted to add about the conversation?
Just as we mentioned earlier about the joint advocacy, this was the topic that that the chief administrative officers also picked up on during the forum. There was the chairs and CAOs separated into 2 rooms, and both parties discussed the different topics that could be taken forward to the province jointly, and this was one that we picked up on. And Comox Valley Regional District and 2 other regional districts have opted to lead this particular initiative with the province, and so we'll do that joint advocacy coming up into September.
I just want to thank James for taking on that piece of work. Some of the CAOs had to volunteer to put that on their plates along with everything else, and just really appreciate the support. We have a comment from Director McCullough.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for bringing this resolution forward and together as an advocacy point through the regional district meetings that happen once a year. Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the best approach to elevating this issue, both at the provincial level and federal, is hearing about it broadly. One question I had about this is that is like small water systems a defined word if that is being received in another province, whether or not it's clear what that means? Just because I wonder if like the municipality of Cumberland could be defined as a small water system if it's being read by you know, someone from a large center, and if we're clear what we mean when we say that.
That's an excellent question that did come up, like, in one of the answers was kind of, when you see it, but I think probably Mark will have a more concise answer than that.
Yeah, thank you through the CEO and through the chair. So the small water systems are defined as having less than, and this is the part I'm not 100% sure about, I think it's 100 connections. But I know when I worked with the chair on this for the, I think to UBCM, maybe that advocacy, we in the letter we talked about small water system, like small water systems for the definition, but then also the other like smaller water systems. This issue definitely applies to many of the CVRD's rural systems that have much higher costs for connection than the municipal ones.
Thanks, and we'll go to Director Monroe.
The question really becomes for me is, we can advocate for systems that are moving into the future, but there's probably been a lot of small water systems that have been forced to be implemented over the last couple of years. There's one that wouldn't apply to Mark's definition, the Union Bay water system that went in, which has about 700 connections or something like that. But, you know, based on the fact that it was an improvement district, it had no ability to have any grants, and therefore the costs of that water are probably significantly higher than many of the other water systems in the valley. So just wondering if this resolution would also try to support those water systems that were forced by a health jurisdiction or something to implement a water system that they can't afford.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think the intent is yes. While Mark referenced the definition for small water systems, I think the spirit and intent is that there are increasing regulations and challenging conditions to meet for water systems, whether it be a truly small water system or something a bit larger. These regulations are challenging and expensive to be able to meet. So looking to petition both provincial and federal governments. I know this is a request through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, but the intent being that there's interest at both levels and for multiple systems. Certainly the prominence of many existing small systems continues to be something that we work with. So
I would say the conversation that was had was certainly much, in fact, most of it was regarding existing in place water systems and the challenge. And I think that while the definition may be 100, you know, if you have 104 connections, it's not like something like it's a whole lot simpler. And what we heard, certainly what I heard from the different chairs, were people really talking about the sort of dollars per connection problem. So you might have 40 connections, or you might have 140, or you might have 400, but depending on the work that requires and the ability of the base of users to support that, support the level that they're required by the province to put in place. All right. So this was for receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? If someone cares to move to requested action. Thanks very much. Any questions on that? Anyone opposed? Great, that carries. And let's move termination. I'm sure someone's seconding that mentally and terminating. Thanks very much, everyone.